Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into some serious financial wisdom.
Sounds good to me.
Well, today we're going deep into Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Classic.
I think it's safe to say our listeners are here because they're ready to unlock the secrets of, not just working hard,
Right.
but making their money work for them.
Absolutely. That's the dream, right?
Totally. And Kiyosaki, well, he's got some pretty unconventional ideas. They might just reshape how you think about wealth.
For sure. One of the things that always gets me is how he uses storytelling to make these complex financial concepts, relatable.
Yeah.
Like take the story about his friend, right?
Oh, yeah.
Totally normal guy facing a pretty common parental fear,
Mm.
saving for college tuition for 4 kids.
Yeah, I remember that story with, what was it, like less than $8,000 saved?
Yeah, something like that. Daunting, right?
For sure. I mean, most people would just panic.
Totally.
Assume their options are, super limited.
Exactly, yeah. But Kiyosaki, always thinking outside the box, right? He guides his friend to this unconventional solution, real estate.
Okay.
They found a property, kind of a down market. And the key here is they secured it using creative financing techniques.
Ah, okay.
Kiyosaki really hammers that point home throughout the whole book.
Yeah, for sure. It's about, looking beyond the traditional bank loans and seeing those,
Yeah, those opportunities.
opportunities that most people miss.
Absolutely. And this wasn't a quick flip for profit either.
Oh, okay.
This was all about long-term wealth through passive income. So they rent out the property,
All right.
and that rental income covers the mortgage, plus extra cash flow on top.
I see. So he turned what? A liability, big college expenses into an asset.
Exactly. Generating money instead of draining it. And this is where Kiyosaki, he really challenges the traditional financial advice, right?
Okay.
He's saying most people focus on earned income from their jobs.
Yeah.
While the wealthy, they prioritize acquiring assets that generate that passive income.
That's a pretty powerful shift in perspective. But the story keeps going, right?
Yeah.
What about when the housing market went back up?
Oh yeah, this is where Kiyosaki brings in this powerful tool, the 1031 tax-deferred exchange.
Okay.
So his friend, he sells the property at a nice profit.
Right.
But instead of paying all those capital gains taxes,
Oh, smart.
he rolls those profits into another investment property, a mini storage facility.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he, deferred the tax burden and at the same time acquired another asset that generates that passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
Did that cycle just keep repeating?
Oh yeah, it did. He eventually sold the storage facility, reinvested those profits, and that initial, what was it, $7,900?
Yeah.
Well, it turned into some serious financial security.
Wow. Okay. So that story really highlights, the key principles from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right?
Yeah.
But I gotta ask, isn't Kiyosaki's definition of assets a little, I don't know, simplistic? What about, investing in education or building valuable skills?
Oh, totally. Good point.
Don't those things generate returns in the long run, too?
That's a great question. It
Right.
definitely raises some interesting points about how we traditionally value certain assets, right?
Yeah.
Well, Kiyosaki, he focuses mainly on the tangible assets, those
Mm.
things that generate income.
Yeah,
There's definitely an argument for that long-term value of, investing in ourselves.
for sure. Maybe it's not about one or the other.
Right.
Maybe it's about recognizing that potential of different types of, assets
Yeah.
and how they can contribute to our, overall financial well-being.
Yeah, I think that's where Kiyosaki's emphasis on financial intelligence really comes in. It's understanding those nuances, the different investment strategies,
Okay.
making those informed decisions based on your own situation, your own goals.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems to challenge the idea that financial risk is always a bad thing.
Yeah, he does.
In fact, he kind of argues that a lack of knowledge, that's the real risk.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he even quotes Warren Buffett on that. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not about avoiding risk altogether, but more about mitigating it
Okay.
through education, through understanding.
And this makes me think about how Kiyosaki breaks income into those three categories, right?
Right.
Earned, portfolio, and passive. Most people are pretty comfortable with that idea of earned income, working for a paycheck.
Yeah, the standard 9 to 5.
Right, right. But Kiyosaki wants us to think beyond that.
He does. And that's where things get really interesting. His argument is that path to financial freedom, well, it lies in converting that earned income
Mm-hmm.
into those passive and portfolio income streams.
Yeah,
That's the key.
it is, yeah. And this is where Kiyosaki kind of breaks away from that conventional financial advice. He's not just saying, like, work hard and save your money.
Yeah.
It's like a total shift in how we think about money and how we, actually build wealth.
So it's not about holding on to that, like, stability of a paycheck.
Right. But more about building a system that's, generating wealth.
Yeah.
Even when you're not actively working.
Exactly.
How realistic is that, though, for the average person?
Yeah.
Kiyosaki, I mean, he seems to come from, like, a place of privilege, right?
Right.
So it can make his ideas feel kind of out of reach for some people.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
It's definitely important to acknowledge that, Kiyosaki's background and his experiences, they definitely shape his perspective.
Yeah.
However, his core message that, financial literacy is a powerful tool
Yeah.
for anyone that resonates, no matter your starting point,
Mhm.
And he says it over and over again. Financial intelligence, that's a learnable skill. It's not something you're born with.
That's encouraging. So it means we're not, like, limited by,
Yeah.
our current situation. But how do we actually develop this financial intelligence? Kiyosaki throws these terms around, like assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
But what do those really mean, like, practically speaking?
So for Kiyosaki, an asset, that's anything that's putting money in your pocket, right?
Okay.
And a liability is anything that's taking money out. Like, he uses the example of a house, right?
Right.
Argues that for most people, it's actually a liability,
Okay.
not an asset.
That kind of goes against, like, everything we've been taught. Homeownership, it's like the American dream.
I know, right?
The cornerstone of it.
And that's a controversial point, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people disagree with him on that.
Okay.
But Kiyosaki, he's saying if your house is draining your cash flow every month, the mortgage payments, property taxes, all that upkeep,
Yeah.
then it's not really an asset in the sense that it's not actually generating income.
Okay, so it's not about, like, avoiding owning a home altogether. It's more about, like, being strategic about it.
Exactly.
Making sure your home fits into, like, a bigger financial plan, one that's focused on building,
Yeah, building those assets.
assets. He seems to be a big fan of diversifying too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Kiyosaki suggests, exploring a whole range of asset classes.
Yeah.
Businesses, stocks, bonds, even precious metals.
Okay.
And the key takeaway there is not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Yeah. Classic investment advice.
It's a fundamental principle.
Okay, so diversification, understanding those different asset classes, that's key. But where do you even begin? Like, if you don't have a lot of financial knowledge,
Right.
it can feel, I don't know, overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. It can be.
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki, he acknowledges that, and he really stresses how important continuous learning is. He's a big fan of reading books,
Okay.
attending seminars, even playing financial games like his cash flow board game,
Okay, yeah.
just to develop better understanding of, money and investing.
So it's almost like he's saying we need to make financial literacy more, like, fun, more engaging.
Exactly. Gamify it a bit,
Okay.
And he also says, find mentors, successful investors, learn from their experience. You can really accelerate your financial growth that way.
It's like finding people who are already
They're doing-
doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
That makes me think of Kiyosaki's own story, turning $5,000 into, like, $1 million asset.
Yeah. Incredible story.
He wasn't born into wealth. He had to learn and apply these principles himself.
He did.
But even with the right knowledge, isn't there still, like, an element of luck involved in being successful with money?
Well, Kiyosaki would probably argue that luck plays a much smaller role than we think.
Okay.
He believes that financial success, it's mainly about mindset, knowledge, and action.
Okay.
He talks about developing a wealthy mindset.
Which, yeah, it sounds a little, like, abstract. What does that even mean, like, practically? What does that look like?
It's about challenging those limiting beliefs that we have about money,
Okay.
replacing those with more empowering beliefs. Kiyosaki's argument is that our thoughts and beliefs about money, they can either hold us back or they can, move us forward.
Yeah, so it's not just about the technical skills.
Right.
It's also about, like, your attitude, your
Exactly.
approach to finances.
Yeah, believing that you can create wealth, that you can make those smart financial decisions,
Okay.
even if you're starting with nothing.
And he also stresses, like, taking action, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Knowledge without action is
Useless.
pretty useless, yeah.
Got to put it into practice.
It's about taking those first steps, even if they're small, right?
Totally.
Kiyosaki encourages people to like start with, manageable investments.
Yeah.
And then gradually, as you gain confidence, as you gain expertise, scale up.
Exactly. And he also points out learning from mistakes. That's a huge part of the process.
Right.
Failure's not something to be afraid of. It's an opportunity to learn, to refine those strategies.
Yeah, so it's about that growth mindset when it comes to finances, right?
Absolutely.
Not being afraid to experiment, to learn from your successes and your setbacks.
For sure.
This is where Kiyosaki's like 3 types of income comes back in, right?
Yeah, don't
Earned, portfolio, and passive.
all connected.
Right.
Yeah.
Understanding those and how to like leverage them.
Right.
It's fundamental to his approach.
Absolutely.
He says most people are stuck in that cycle of, trading time for money
Right.
through earned income. But the wealthy, they're focusing on building those passive and portfolio income streams.
Yeah, they're playing a different game.
It makes me think back to what you were saying earlier about, Kiyosaki's background.
Yeah.
And how his advice might seem kind of out of reach for some people.
Right.
But if we focus on that core principle, like building those diverse income streams,
Yeah.
that's something anyone can work towards, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not about copying Kiyosaki's exact path,
Yeah.
but more about adapting those principles to your own situation.
Right, to your own goals.
Exactly. Maybe it's starting a side hustle,
Yeah.
something that can generate some passive income,
Yeah.
or learning about like dividend-paying stocks to build up a portfolio.
It's about taking those first steps, no matter how small they are,
For sure.
and then consistently building on them.
Yeah, consistency is key.
And this is where, finding guidance from those who've already achieved that financial success, that can be so helpful, right?
It's huge, yeah. Kiyosaki talks about this all the time, the importance of mentors.
Okay.
Surrounding yourself with people who can offer that support, that guidance.
Yeah.
Find those people who are already living that financial life that you want.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Having those role models, those mentors, they can give you inspiration.
Yeah.
And practical advice too.
Yeah.
Especially when you're navigating all the, the complexities of the financial world.
Totally. And it's not just about finding those mentors.
Yeah.
It's about being proactive in your own learning.
Okay.
Kiyosaki, he pushes for continuous education,
Okay.
reading those books, attending seminars, even going to workshops
Okay.
on those specific investment strategies you're interested in.
So it's about taking ownership
Yeah.
of your financial education,
Yeah.
not just like relying on someone else to manage your money for you.
Totally. Kiyosaki really believes that, financial literacy,
Okay.
that's essential
Okay.
for personal empowerment, for achieving that true financial freedom.
This has been an incredible deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I know, right?
We unpacked those core principles, challenged some of his ideas,
Yeah.
explored the practical implications of his approach to building wealth.
It's a book that definitely gets people talking and challenges how we think about money.
Totally.
Whether you agree with everything he says or not,
Yeah.
that focus on financial education, taking control of your financial destiny.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a message that resonates with everyone, right?
Yeah.
Everyone who's looking for that path to financial freedom.
Absolutely. As we wrap up here, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think it's that the power to shape your financial future. It's in your hands.
Okay.
It starts with, developing that financial intelligence, cultivating that growth mindset,
Yeah.
and taking consistent action towards those goals you have.
So for everyone listening, remember, financial freedom, it's a journey, not a destination.
Well said.
And as Kiyosaki says, it all starts with that first step.